Our next speaker is somebody who I met years and years ago in a past life when I used to work on the Game Developers Conference. And before that past life, and since that past life, Robert Tercek has been in a wide range of industries in the entertainment field, in games, in television, in movies, even working with lottery people, which is a kind of entertainment, right? And all throughout that, Robert's been building an arsenal of extraordinary insights, unbelievable perception on the future, and a vision for how the world can be and should be. And when we were planning this year's session, I thought, I really want Robert to come and share with us his vision of the future, and especially because it's so, even though we're not necessarily all of us in the entertainment business, we are to some extent in the entertainment business as it relates to getting and keeping people engaged. And so it's my great pleasure to bring up to the stage Robert Tercek.
Thank you.
Sir.
Thanks, Gabe. So yeah, a couple of months ago, Gabe asked me if I would like to give a talk. And in our conversation, we said, great, let's do a talk about the game-based society. Can you guys bring my slides up on the screen, please? So we had this conversation. I said, well, that sounds pretty cool. It sounds trippy and cosmic. And then I got off the phone call, and I sat there thinking, what did I just agree to talk about? So I had to sort of rack my brains, and I realized, actually, it's a really good topic, and it's a really good time to talk about it, because there are these three big trends happening, and they're at the early stage right now. But I think over the next 5 years, you're going to start to see these things really manifest themselves in a way that's very tangible and concrete. So I'm going to give you a preview of those things. The first one you all know about, you've heard about it, the Internet of Things, right? The idea here is very straightforward. As the cost, power of a microprocessor continues to decline, as computers get cheaper, smaller, faster, and better, we're going to start to embed them in just about everything, and just about everything is going to be connected to the network. It's a pretty cool idea. What it means in practice is that the things that we wear, the things that we embed in our bodies, the things we project on ourselves, are all going to be connected to the network like a node, and they'll talk to the devices in our home, our HVAC systems, our lighting systems, the little tiny smart devices that we plug into our TVs and make them smart, other kinds of cool devices. This is actually an Android phone embedded inside of a Nikon camera. We'll be able to use those things to talk to other things on the network, like flying things. Whole wall-sized displays. This is at the Cleveland Museum of Art, which is actually a really extraordinary preview of what the future of museums will look like. It's an enormous wall-sized display that responds to you. Even whole buildings eventually will be turned into a computer of some sort, like this Amazon warehouse. Cars, of course, you've heard about this. Today, the average car has about 60 microprocessors on it already. You have more computing power in a car than the Apollo space mission had on the spacecraft. In the lighting systems and even our streets are going to start to be smart, because we'll build sensor networks. These are LED streetlights. You're going to start to see these replace the old lights in cities. And as they do, they're going to install Wi-Fi hubs in all of them, because they do need a little transformer. So it doesn't really cost much more to make them a network as well, or a node on the network. And eventually, the entire city is going to be smart. There are more than 100 smart city projects underway around the world right now as we speak. So these are initiatives aimed at basically turning our cities into smart networks that we can connect to. So I think that this is actually kind of cool, because this first idea then, the Internet of Things, makes the city a canvas for games. It gets the game out of the phone or out of the console and into the world around us. That's one component. And of course, the way we'll interact with all those smart things around us is most likely going to be the smartphone that you already have in your pocket. And the reason for that is there's a lot of scale issues involved here. Wearable computers are very promising and very exciting, but at this point, they're not a big enough scale to compete effectively with a smartphone. Smartphone has so many sensors built into it already, and it'll continue to keep a pace. And so the smartphone then is our link to this Internet of Things. That's the interface that we're going to use to control and talk to and play with these experiences around us. Now, the Internet of Things is also a very hyped phenomenon. Last year, it got a lot of press and attention. It was a very overhyped meme, because you started to see charts that predicted how many things we possibly could connect to the network. Here's a chart that's actually more falls in the reasonable range, and it projects that by the end of the decade, there'll be about 10 billion devices connected to the network. Of course, they'll all be talking to each other. What's important about that is to see how that compares to things that are growing quickly, like smartphones and tablets. You've heard all about the growth of smartphones and tablets. But as you can see here, by the end of the decade, they're projecting that there'll be somewhere between 5 and 6 billion smartphones and probably about 1 billion or maybe just over 1 billion tablets. Well, with 10 billion devices that are in the Internet of Things, you can see that's going to become very quickly a much bigger market. It makes sense. There's a lot more things than there are people. And soon they'll all be talking to each other. The second concept I want to introduce you to, that's the second part of these exciting trends that I think are going to turn us into a game-based society, is the concept of micro-location. This is a relatively new idea, but you're going to hear quite a lot about it this year because of a thing called beacons. They're starting to install beacon networks inside of stores, malls, and other public places. And proximal networks, these are the networks of devices around you that you can connect to. And of course, whenever you connect to them, a little bit of data is transferred. We can track all that behavior, and that starts to give us a sense of where you are, where you've been, where you might be going next. And then finally, the last concept that's in this notion of micro-location is invisible buttons. Because with beacons, you're able to actually make a hotspot out of any surface in a room. Any surface in a store or in a mall or in a school can become something that you can interact with. And we have millimeter precision here. So this is not about GPS, which gives you precision to about 3 feet. This is about now being able to target people, interact with them, and make surfaces responsive within a few millimeters. The concept they're using to describe this is the physical graph. So you've heard of the social graph, that's your friend network on Facebook. You've heard of the interest graph, that would be the topics and subjects that you follow, perhaps on Twitter. The physical graph is going to be a combination of the places you've been, your location, and then the proximal network, all that stuff that you've connected with as you move through town. That's going to tell us a great deal about you and where you've gone. From the consumer standpoint, it's going to look like a world where every surface is clickable. So you can start to see how these two pieces combined together give us a chance to start to turn the city into a canvas for games. So the next time you walk through a store, a grocery store, or a mall, look around you and think of all the places where you might have some interaction, where you might be able to connect your phone and interact with any of those surfaces around you. Very soon that will happen because this year you're going to start to see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of deployments of these beacons from Apple. And they look like this. They're fairly small things. They're funny looking, and they're meant to be. You're meant to be able to notice them and see them on the wall. They're not meant to be some hidden, invisible, secret, sneaky technology. They're meant to be something that you can notice. There are already more than a dozen companies working on this, working on technologies that would allow retailers to communicate with their shoppers in some targeted way based on where they happen to be in the store. This is Estimote. I have no connection to this company. I just thought I'd share. That's one of the companies that's in the process of building out these networks, these iBeacon networks inside of shops. Now, these are some photographs from technology that's been deployed or tested already in retail. What you're looking at here is a surveillance camera inside of a store, and you can see that they've created a kind of a heat trail that shows you where the person has been in the store as they move through. Here's another one. This is like a heat map. What's starting to happen to retail in their efforts to combat the internet and e-commerce, retailers have had to up their data game. They've had to bring new technologies to bear. So when today you go to a retail exhibition, it kind of reminds me of Comdex back in the heyday because you've got all these technology companies, IBM, Intel, and so forth. They're all displaying their wares there, and they're all trying to show retailers how they can start to track analytics, data analytics inside of their stores the same way that a web publisher would use data analytics to see which pages were happening. You can literally generate a heat map of a store. And you can actually A/B test two locations against each other. So you could test out a display in one part of a store in one city, and you could test that same display somewhere else and see which one performs a little bit better, which type of display works better. So these analytics are going to really help marketers start to understand who moves inside of their shops and what they do. And there's a lot more technology than I can describe that's afoot in the retail environment. This is emotion showing you facial recognition, and they've actually developed a system that can read facial expressions. That's a picture I took of myself, and you can see I was smiling, so I was appropriately tagged joyful. You can also see that you can tag people with anger and fear. I think if this technology is inappropriately deployed, you'll probably see more people with those expressions on their faces. Now imagine tagging that information or cross-correlating that information with cash register data, with transaction data, and all of a sudden you're going to get a perfect thumbprint on that person. You're going to be able to understand who they are with their credit card or if they do mobile transactions. So you start to get a sense of where they go in your shop, how long they spend there, how frequently they come back, and then what they actually end up buying. So that will yield tremendous amounts of data. You might think about the way you shop today as generating data, but nobody's really capturing it very well. But I think that's going to change tremendously as we introduce these concepts of the location graph, the proximal graph, and the physical graph into retail environments. Now, we're just at the beginning of this. So there's only a third of the people online today. The UN estimates that by the end of this year, 2014, there'll be about 3 billion people using the internet. Of course, that number is going to grow, and one of the reasons it's going to grow is because smartphones are getting incredibly cheap. What you're looking at here are two versions of the Firefox smartphone. This is an open source mobile operating system developed by the folks at Mozilla in partnership with Telefonica, which is one of the world's biggest mobile companies. And then they commissioned a bunch of different manufacturers to produce versions of this. These phones are full-featured smartphones, but unlike Apple, they don't sell for $600. They sell for 60 euros. And that price will surely go down. And so I think it's safe to say that the next billion people who come to the internet will probably access the web from a device like this. That's why analysts project that mobile is going to emerge as the #1 computing platform by far, and that's one of the reasons why I'm taking some time to include this in this talk today. By the end of the decade, they expect there to be about 6 billion smartphones in use, 6 billion smartphones in use. And already, our smartphone usage has started to eclipse almost all other media. And this is actually really important for those who advertise in traditional media like broadcasting and television, because what we're starting to see now is that we use our mobile phones about a third more than we use our desktop and laptop computers. So mobile phone is becoming our primary point of access to the web. And it's closing in on television in terms of minutes per day of viewing time or usage time. And this chart's a couple years old. This is from 2012, so it's only going to increase. Television isn't necessarily growing. It's pretty stable, so that means eventually that mobile chart will start to exceed it. What's striking to me about all this is that this space is wide open. It's like a virgin snowfield. There's very few people are looking at the combination of these three things: the Internet of Things, the proximal graph or the physical graph, and your smartphone. But if you take those three components and put them together, you can do some pretty incredible stuff. One company that is at the very forefront is Shopkick. I'm sure you're familiar with them. They've sort of gamified the loyalty program and turned that into a location-based game inside of shopping malls. They're rolling out beacons with a pretty aggressive program across the United States with certain retailers. But there are some companies that are missing in action completely. For instance, this week, one group that you will not see here at the Gamification Summit are the big game publishers, because they're all down in Los Angeles at E3. They're missing in action completely because they have an entirely different set of preoccupations. Right now, they're very focused on the new set of consoles that just came out, the new PlayStation and the Xbox. And there's also this kind of, well, I can only call it a preoccupation with the Oculus Rift. It's almost the exact opposite phenomenon that I'm describing, because where I'm talking about games that kind of go into the world around us, that we can discover in the cities around us and turn the whole city into a playground, Oculus Rift does the almost exact opposite thing. It draws the player into a virtual world, and no doubt that will be an amazing experience. But because the game companies are so focused on that platform right now, I think they're missing this opportunity to focus on games in the world around us. I think they're also a little bit preoccupied because of the $2 billion valuation that Facebook put on Oculus Rift. It seems like a pretty rich hunting ground. Another group of companies that you might expect to see play a role here, but strangely are absent, are the mobile game publishers. Mobile gaming has emerged as the fastest growing and most widely accepted gameplay format in the world right now, so it's very popular. But most mobile game publishers are focused on building a utility-type game that runs like a business that they can sustain for a year. It's very hard to establish that. These four are four of the most successful games. You know Angry Birds, Candy Crush, probably know Clash of Clans, and you may know Puzzles and Dragons. But these things run like a utility. They just throw off tons of cash. King.com, which creates Candy Crush, just posted EBITDA of about $350 million, and most of that revenue comes from Candy Crush. So these are very, very, very successful games in mobile, and so the companies that publish them are pretty preoccupied with running that, and that's an experience that is residing entirely within the phone. And the companies that haven't achieved that level of success in mobile, they tend to be doing something I think is very uncreative. They're doing clones. So basically, if you can't create Clash of Clans, then just go for Clash of Clones and knock it off. There are about 300 knockoffs of this game. You saw that with Flappy Bird. Flappy Bird, there were probably 150 knockoffs in the App Store. This is very, very typical of what's going on in mobile. So these two companies that you would expect, these two kinds of companies that you would expect to be the dominant players in this space because it's about gaming, they're actually preoccupied with the things that are happening on their platform. They're missing in action. Game-based society is going to be all about context. And previously, you heard a little bit about context from one of the previous speakers who talked about it in the context of a loyalty program. Here, what I'm talking about is context that actually knows where you are, precisely, down to the millimeter, where you are. They know that in a football stadium, which seat and which row you're sitting in. They can target you precisely. And it's a responsive environment that knows not only where you are, but what you're doing while you're in that space. And our devices, particularly our smartphones, are gradually becoming context sensitive. So if you have an Android phone and you use Google Now and you're using Google Maps, that phone knows where you're going. It knows how close you are to your destination. It knows what you're probably going to do when you get there because it's looked at your calendar and it's looked at your email, and it can start to predict what comes next. That confers massive opportunity, I think, for marketers. It confers a tremendous opportunity on a marketer. You could call it a marketer's dream. And sure, it's going to be a marketer's dream as long as we don't screw it up. How might we screw it up? Well, the first thing we might do is make it creepy and Orwellian, the way the NSA did, where sort of you wake up one day and you realize everything you do is being recorded and watched. I don't think consumers are going to like that too much. The second mistake we might make is to launch it the way the banks tried to launch NFC. Remember NFC? Does anyone remember NFC? It's actually a thing outside the United States, but it hasn't really caught on here. When MasterCard was in the process of launching it, they asked me for some advice about how to do it, and I said, look, make it a game. They said, well, it's a transaction system for phones. I said, I know, make it a game. And they said, but it's about transacting, it's about buying stuff. I said, I know, that works for you. Nobody wants a credit card. Everybody who has a credit card doesn't want another credit card, so just selling it like a credit card isn't going to work. If you look at what people are doing on mobile phones, by far the dominant form of entertainment and by far the highest monetizing form of entertainment is games. So sell what people are interested in and don't ram something down their throat. They didn't take my advice, and lo and behold, it's been sort of a dud. It might come back. Mobile transactions will surely come back. Maybe NFC will. But you see, you face two challenges as a marketer to change people's behavior. The first one is make me care about this thing that I don't know about. Why do I care about micro-location? Why do I care about these offers? Why do I care about notifications from beacons? I don't know if I do care. So you have a skeptical audience. You have to surmount that skepticism. But then if you push it too far, you can make them paranoid because it's like, holy cow, I'm being tracked as I walk through this store. And so there's a very fine balance in between those things you'll have to navigate. And so I was thinking, what kind of game actually would work in this environment? And I racked my brains. You could think of a lot of games you played as a kid in school. Hide and go seek, tag, King of the Hill. All of those game mechanics would actually work in the environment I'm describing. But there's one game I actually think is a fantastic model that we should consider carefully. It's actually the most successful game in history. So here come the secrets. Pay attention to this part. You see, we love to tell ourselves that we're reinventing everything. We're launching things that have never before been conceived of, particularly when it comes to phrases like gamification and crowdfunding. And gamified crowdfunding is a hot concept right now. But of course, this idea has been around with us for a very long time in the form of the lottery. The lottery predates modern civilization. The Great Wall of China was built as a great civic project. The fundraising was raised through lotteries, as were many of the civic works for the Roman empires during the reign of Julius Caesar. Queen Elizabeth I launched the world's first national lottery. Some people think that the lottery is sort of un-American. They're not sure this is the thing that the U.S. states should be involved with. Those people are wrong. Lotteries predate the United States of America. The Virginia colonies were rescued. The economy cratered in the Virginia colonies for the first couple of years, and if it weren't for the lotteries they ran there, they would not have survived. Benjamin Franklin used the lottery to raise funds for the defense of Philadelphia during the French and Indian Wars. George Washington used lotteries to finance the construction of roads in rural Virginia. And of course, the Continental Congress, before there was a U.S., the Continental Congress financed the War of Independence with lotteries. They had no other way to raise money. There were no taxes. They had no taxing authority, and so lotteries were how we paid our soldiers. You might be surprised to know that many of our greatest universities in the United States were also funded through lotteries, including Harvard, Princeton, Columbia, and Yale. They all raised part of their endowment through a series of lotteries. And think about it today when you're asked to give an alumni donation to your college. How much more would you be willing to give if every dollar you gave you another chance to win some sort of terrific prize? It's a great mechanism. It really, really works. So lotteries emerged as one of the first effective taxing mechanisms. It's a tax people don't mind paying, and it's how a lot of the infrastructure was built in the United States and elsewhere in the 19th century. Today, the lottery is a big business in the US. It's a $68 billion business. 44 states have it, plus 3 territories. This is what the map looks like. No surprise, they don't have it in Utah or in Nevada for different reasons. But it's a really big business. A lot of people are not aware that the lottery business is twice the size of the land-based casino business. It's also much bigger than the tribal casinos in the US. And it's 3 times the size of the whole video game software business. So it's actually quite a substantial business in its own right. And the reason this is such a successful game format is that it touches on a lot of the things that make games successful, a game that people love. First, it's really fun and really simple. It's easy to learn how to play. Second, it has real prizes. People love real prizes. They love to win stuff. Third, it gives you hope. And this is really what you're paying for when you buy a lottery ticket, is you're paying for hope, that experience of maybe this is my chance. Of course, you're encouraged in that by the idea that real people do win. People really win the lottery. So people's lives are changed. But secondly, the local community wins too. Every time you buy a lottery ticket, literally our state lotteries pump billions of dollars back into the local economy. They pay for police forces, fire departments, parks, education, and lots of other great stuff that people do cherish. And so those tangible results, I think, are what make the lottery game so popular and so enduring in every culture around the world. To summarize this, lotteries give the player a reason to care, but they also demonstrate that there are tangible benefits for everybody, not just the players, but everybody, including non-participants. And that's a really cool way to think about pushing your loyalty programs and your gamification programs out to the community where they live. Try to make everybody a winner. Try to think of ways to make everybody a winner. Okay, now I know what you're thinking. Some people are thinking this. They're going, wait. Lotteries, they're evil and un-American. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's true at all. They predate America. So that's not quite accurate. But what is accurate is that our US state lotteries are terrible at marketing. They're very terrible at expressing this idea of giving back to the community. They just don't do a good job of it. This is how they typically market. I come from Ohio, so I can kind of dish out my own state lottery here. It's just not the most awesome marketing in the world. Virginia does a little bit better job because in their logo, they remind you where the money goes. They remind you what charities or what important public services are funded by the lottery. When you get outside the US, actually, you see this done much better. For instance, in Quebec, all the sports events and music events are lottery funded, so they say Lotto Quebec, and people have a great feeling about the lottery. When you go to London and you go to those amazing museums that are all free for people to enter, you'll notice this logo is displayed discreetly in the corner. The lottery makes all those art programs possible. Now, the world has changed tremendously in the last 12 or 15 years. We've seen smart cars and smartphones and all kinds of cool new devices in our lives, robotics, and all these amazing leaps and changes. But the US lotteries haven't changed at all. They're still selling the exact same ticket-based games, the same kind of scratch games. They haven't really evolved much. And that's because they're stuck. The US lotteries are stuck in the current political environment. There's a lot of forces working against the lotteries. They're actually stifling their innovation. They would love to try to do new kinds of games on different devices, but they're unable to do that. So the lotteries themselves are having a very difficult time with all the resistance from these groups innovating. And I think that creates a tremendous opportunity for other companies that would like to appropriate these game dynamics and start to apply them to games, gamification programs. You can get some lessons from Europe where they aren't held back in the same way. In Europe, they've introduced competition to the lotteries, and lo and behold, they have some good ideas. There's a postcode lottery in Holland that is just doing fantastically well. When you buy a ticket, if you win, all the winners in your zip code or your postal code are winners. So if you bought a ticket and you're in that zip code, you get to share the winnings with everybody else. And of course, if you live in that zip code and you didn't buy a ticket, you feel pretty foolish. This turns out to be a very compelling mechanic, and it roots it right back into your local community. There's another thing, there's charitable lotteries all over Europe, and these charitable lotteries have some pretty cool mandates. I'm working with one lottery in Europe now, and we're working on a program for local teams, sports teams for kids. And you can raise money with the team. We're designing a game that helps people raise money for their local team. Just in closing, I looked around for games that are actually using these mechanics today, and I found one. This is a game called Scantopia. It's developed by my friend Steve Kane in Boston, and it uses many of these mechanics. Not all of them, but it's going in the right direction. Scantopia, their mission is they want you to photograph the world around you and tag it and archive it, and so they're having people scan in with their smartphones the barcodes, and then they label the packages. And so they're building this massive database of tagged photographs taken by people. And what the people get is instant coupons. So it's almost like a coupon casino. There's also daily doubles, so you can have a daily win if you scan the right thing. And there's a progressive jackpot that they've built in. So if you scan the right thing and you win the jackpot, you can actually win multiple points. And you can actually cash these things out. So they've created a kind of game that isn't itself a lottery. It's not really infringing on any kind of laws in the United States. But it feels like it. It mimics that dynamic. And I want to make that point clear as I close here. You don't need to be in the gambling business to take advantage of this. You do not. That's not my message at all. You don't need to do that. You don't even need to necessarily offer cash prizes. That's not my message either. But what I think you can do is take advantage of these dynamics that give people a chance to win something for themselves and something for their community, a game that gives something back to the greater good. It could be a tremendous outcome for loyalty programs on smartphones and gamification programs, and give people a lot of ways to win. Not just one big prize, lots and lots of ways to win, so that people get kind of motivated. Today, our lotteries unfortunately use this idea of winning millions. You know, win a $300 million jackpot in Mega Millions. That's how we sort of sell the lottery today, but I think that's wrong. They need to turn that message around. And if the lotteries don't do it, this is an opportunity for you in your gamification program. You can turn that model around and say, millions win, because everybody who plays is contributing to a pot, and that pot is going to go back out to the community in the form of some prizing. That, to me, is a model for a game-based society. Thanks for your time, and enjoy the rest of the show.